Prabhupada ki. ISKCON BBD founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki. Jayam Vishnupad Paramhansa Padavajikacharya Stovtadas at the Shishimada's Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj ki. Ananta Gauri Vaishnavinda ki. Namacharya Shlahadadas Thakur ki. Premsa Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaura Bhaktavinda ki. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shamakunda Radhakunda Gidigabadana ki jai. Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Navadvip Mayapur Dham ki jai. Ganga Jamuna Mai ki jai. Tulasi Devi Maharani ki jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Harinam Sankirtana ki jai. Brihat Madanga ki jai. All glorious the assembled devotees. All glorious the assembled devotees. All glorious the assembled devotees. All glorious to Sri Sri Guru and Gadam. All glorious to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter 11, text 34. Evam nirpanam shiti bara janmanam akshohinibi parivrita tejasam vidhaya bhairam svasano yatanalam mito vadheno padato nirayudha evam nirpanam shitibara janmanam evam nirpanam shitibara janmanam akshohini bi parivrita tejasam akshohini bi parivrita tejasam vidhaya vairam svasano yatanalam vidhaya vairam svasano yatanalam mito vadheno padato nirayudha mito vadheno padato nirayudha evam nirpanam shitibada janmanam akshohini bi parivrita tejasam vidhaya vairam svasano yatanalam mito vadheno padato nirayudha. Vaishnavis. Okay. Evam, thus, Nirpanam of the kings or administrators. Shitibada, the burden of the earth. Janmanam, born in that way. Akshahinibi, empowered by a military strength of horses, elephants, chariots, and infantry. Parivrta, being puffed up by such surroundings. Tejasam, prowess. Vidhaya, having created. Vairam, hostility. Svasana, interaction of the wind and the pipe plants. Yataha, as it is. Analam, fire. Mitaha, with one another. Badhena, by killing them. Upadata, relieved. Nirudaha, by himself without being a party to such fighting. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The Lord was pacified after killing those kings who were burdensome to the earth. They were puffed up with their military strength, their horses, elephants, chariots, infantry, etc. He himself was not a party in the fight. He simply created hostility between the powerful administrators, and they fought amongst themselves. He was like the wind, which causes friction between bamboos and so sparks a fire. Purport. As stated above, the living beings are not factual enjoyers of things which are manifested as God's creation. The Lord is the genuine proprietor and enjoyer of everything manifested in His creation. Unfortunately, influenced by the deluding energy, the living being becomes a false enjoyer under the dictation of the modes of nature. Puffed up by such a false sense of becoming God, the deluded living being increases his material strength by so many activities and thus becomes the burden of the earth. So much so that the earth becomes completely uninhabitable by the sane. This state of affairs is called dharmashaglani, or misuse of the energy of the human being. When such misuse of the human energy is prominent, the saner living beings become perturbed by the awkward situation created by the vicious administrators who are simply burdens of the earth. And the Lord appears by His internal potency just to save the saner section of humanity and to alleviate the burden due to the earthly administrators in different parts of the world. He does not favor either of the unwanted administrators, but by His potential power He creates hostility between such unwanted administrators as the air creates fire in the forest by the friction of the bamboos. The fire in the forest takes place automatically by the force of the air, and similarly hostility between different groups of politicians takes place by the unseen design of the Lord. The unwanted administrators, puffed up by false power and military strength, thus become engaged in fighting amongst themselves over ideological conflicts and so exhaust themselves of all powers. The history of the world reflects this factual will of the Lord, and it will continue to be enacted until the living beings are attached to the service of the Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita, this fact is very vividly described. Bhagavad Gita chapter 7, text 14. It is said, "The diluting energy is my potency, and thus it is not possible for the dependent living beings to supersede the strength of the material modes. But those who take shelter in me, the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, can cross over the gigantic ocean of material energy." This means that no one can establish peace and prosperity in the world by fruitive activities or by speculative philosophy or ideology. The only way is to surrender unto the Supreme Lord and thus become free from the illusion of the diluting energy. Unfortunately, persons who are engaged in destructive work are unable to surrender to this supreme person, to the personality of Godhead. They are all fools of the first order. They are the lowest of the human species, and they are robbed of their knowledge, although apparently they seem to be academically educated. They are all of the demoniac mentality, always challenging the supreme power of the Lord. Those who are very materialistic, always hankering after material power and strength, are undoubtedly fools of the first order because they have no information of the living energy. And being ignorant of that supreme spiritual science, they are absorbed in material science, which ends with the end of the material body. They are the lowest of human beings, because the human life is especially meant for reestablishing the lost relation with the Lord. They miss this opportunity of being engaged in material activity. They miss this opportunity by being engaged in material activities. They are robbed of their knowledge because even after prolonged speculation, they cannot reach the stage of knowing the personality of Godhead, the summum bonum of everything. And all of them are men of demoniac principle, and they suffer the consequences, as did such materialistic heroes as Ravana, Hiranyakasipu, Kamsa, and others. Om Gyanatam Shajananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gudave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadamayam Dadati Swapadanti Kam. So, another masterpiece purport by Srila Prabhupada. Okay, so the chapter is Krishna's entrance into Dwarka. And this particular verse is, a lot of these other verses have been talking about how the residents of Dwarka, with how they were responding, how happy they were for Krishna to come back. This is kind of like a bit of an aside, this particular verse. It's changing the subject a little bit, and which is good, because it's interesting. And right here in the beginning of the translation, who's ever speaking at this point, I'm not sure who, is our maybe Sutta Goswami at this point, I'm not sure. But he's making the point here that the Lord was pacified after killing those kings who were burdensome to the earth. Okay? So, in what sense, this is for the uninitiated devotees, this question, okay? In what sense were these kings burdensome to the earth? Yeah, right. That's a good answer. They were burdensome to the earth in the sense that they were totally not God conscious, okay? And they were interfering with other people's opportunities to become God conscious. See? That's the purpose of the whole cosmic manifestation. It's an opportunity to give the living entities, especially when they come to the human form of life, it's an opportunity. Okay, now here's your chance to get out of the cycle of birth and death and go back home, back to Godhead. The human, the whole cosmic manifestation ultimately is created for that purpose. And now, after going through the whole evolutionary cycle, 8,400,000 species of life, or 8 million species of life, you finally come to the human form of life. Here's the chance for for those souls, those spirit souls, to take up the spiritual path and make some progress towards getting out of the cycle of birth and death, going back to Godhead. And here are these kings, these powerful, these leaders, and they're interfering. They're blocking. They're interfering with people's opportunities to do that. So Krishna doesn't like that. It's like you're messing up Krishna's plan here. Krishna, the whole purpose of this whole cosmic manifestation is to give these people a chance, give these souls a chance. And here are these, particularly materialistic living entities, not only totally losing their own opportunity, but making it difficult, if not impossible, for other people to exercise their right in the human form of life, which is to become God conscious. So Krishna eliminates them. And Prabhupada refers to a verse here in the Bhagavad Gita, Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhutanam adharmasya tadatmanam shrujamiham. Krishna says, whenever there's a decline in religious principles and a predominant rise of irreligion, I descend myself, and in order to deliver the pious, annihilate the miscreants, and reestablish principles of religion, I invent myself millennium after millennium. So that's Krishna's mission. That's Krishna's mission, to do that. He wants to give the human beings a chance. It's kind of like, okay, you come this far, you should have a chance. Fair go, as they say in Australia. Okay? So, and when that doesn't happen, Krishna makes some arrangement to deal with that. When that's being interfered with, Krishna makes some arrangement to deal with that. And it's Prabhupada actually, and the verse and the purport gives some insight into how he does that. He doesn't even have to get directly involved. He does it in a very clever way. Like here it's mentioned how he simply created hostility. He said he was not a party in the fight himself. He simply created hostility between the powerful administrators, and they fought amongst themselves. Just like he was like the wind, which causes friction between bamboos and so sparks a fire. Prabhupada gives another example in a lecture, I think I heard in a lecture, of a teacher. When the students are misbehaving, the teacher will call both students up to the front, and the teacher will go, okay, now you hold that person's ear, hold this kid's ear. And he goes, and the other kid, now you hold his ear. Okay, now you pull. And one kid pulls the other kid's ear, so immediately the other kid pulls the other kid's ear, and then, it's back. So the teacher doesn't have to do anything. The teacher doesn't have to do anything to discipline them, other than he makes that arrangement, or she makes that arrangement. And then the kids punish each other. So that's what's going on here in the material world. By Krishna's arrangement, these people are punishing each other, right? And to the point where they're going to, just exhaust all their resources, and then hopefully it'll clear the field so people can exercise their opportunity of self-realization, So anyway, somebody might ask, well, but wait a second, okay, but that was 5,000 years ago, and obviously this is referring to the Battle of Kurukshetra. But what about today? I mean, what about what's going on today? Where's Krishna today? Well, Krishna is here today as the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Prabhupada said in a lecture here in Los Angeles back about 1972 that the ISKCON is an incarnation of Krishna. See? So this movement is an incarnation of Krishna. And this movement is actually meant for the same purpose as was being referred to here. This movement is meant for the same purpose. It's to fulfill Krishna's mission, which is, Dharma samstapanartaya sambhavami, to reestablish the principles of religion. And it's doing that in the form of our missionary activities. See? And there's like, well, just to, they say the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, so I'm going to just say it like that. Our activities are tantamount to what's being described here of the creating Krishna creating the hostility between the kings so that they fight each other and destroy each other. What's the equivalent to that? The modern day equivalent to that is our book distribution and our Harinam. These activities are meant to do that, just to give. It's the circumstances are slightly different and the approach is slightly different, but the ultimate effect is the same. It's to give people an opportunity to utilize the human form of life for self-realization. Okay? These books, they're all a person needs. When you give somebody one of Prabhupada's books, it's like you're a person going into a prison and handing the prisoner a key, right? It's like distributing keys in a prison to get out. Any prisoner that's fortunate and intelligent will take that key and he'll use it. You see? And if they don't, what can you do? I mean, if imagine you go into a prison, you say, "Hey, look, here you go. Here's the key. When I leave, you take this key, wait for the right time, and all you got to do is walk up to that door there and put it in the lock, turn it, and off you go." See? A person has to be able to do that. So when you give somebody one of Prabhupada's books, you're doing that. You're giving them a key. You're giving them the what they need to start their spiritual life and start making progress towards getting out of the cycle of birth and death and going back home, back to Godhead. And so that's why this book distribution is such an important activity. I mean, Prabhupada here in Los Angeles, well, wherever he went, he went to sleep very early. He got up very early, and he spent hours that he could have been resting. He sacrificed his own sleep to produce these books. Right? He didn't stay up all night figuring out tunes, how to chant the Hare Krishna mantra. Although I'm not trying to say that that's not important. He wasn't thinking about, well, what tunes can I give all my disciples so they can chant them on the Harinams, or what recipes can I give them to. No. I mean, once again, I'm not trying to say these things. But what he did do was he stayed up, in these early hours of the morning, and he's producing these purports one after the other. Right? So the books are super important, and there are, I think, the primary thrust, for the preaching, and these books were, they're amazing. Prabhupada's purports are absolutely amazing. I mean, when Savasa we hear him every day in Bhagavatam class, and every morning Savasa is reading after Mangalarti, and at least the effect, to my mind, is always the same. I marvel. I sit there and marvel as I hear the purports. I say, wow, this is so simple and so clear, and the message is so consistent, and it's so comprehensive. Prabhupada takes so many different points into consideration. I'm just going to consult my notes here. And the most important thing about it, they address people's concern. People's concern is this. They're thinking, why is life so messed up? Why is it that despite the fact that I'm really trying, I'm really struggling and trying hard in my life, things are there's so many things messed up in the world and in my life. What the heck's going on here? And Prabhupada's purports address that. They clearly explain what's wrong. Bodily, we're not misidentifying the body as the self. I'm not going to even go into the philosophy, but they clearly just, boom, just explode and just reveal very succinctly and clearly what the problem is. And Prabhupada then goes on to offer a very positive spiritual alternative. And here's what you can do. Here's the problem, okay? Here's why it's so messed up and things are so miserable. And here's what you could do. And now you just got to do it. You see? And so the books are really, as I said, it's like a key. If a sincere person gets one of these books, reads it, and puts it into practice, what they've learned in the book, puts that into practice in their life, they're home and hose. I mean, they're on their way home back to Godhead. Now, somebody might ask, well, wait a second. Or somebody might say, but, wait a second. This movement's been around about 50 years now. Book distribution's been going on for kind of close to that, perhaps a little bit less. And we don't see, a big result, really. I mean, the face of the world doesn't seem to have changed. And that might be true, okay? But you got to remember also, this is the Kali Yuga. This is the Kali Yuga. This is, this is an age that's, it's an interesting thing that's going on right now, okay? It's an age to facilitate the conditioned souls that wanted to try to enjoy unrestricted sense gratification. That's part of the function of the Kali Yuga. But simultaneously, Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement has been introduced here, has come. It's in this Kali Yuga, and that's an opportunity for sincere people to go back home, back to Godhead. There's a verse in the 5th canto of the Bhagavatam that describes about how the demigods are lining up to take birth on earth at this time, so that they participate in Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement, because they know that by doing that in one short lifetime, they can go back home, back to Godhead. See? So what you have on the planet today is you have a lot of really insincere people. You have a lot of really insincere souls, people who aren't at all interested in spiritual life, because, you take birth in the Kali Yuga, as human in Kali Yuga, because, a lot of them, because they have that very strong desire for unrestricted sense gratification. But then there's a lot of gems out there too, and there's a lot of people maybe who can become gems by the mercy of the devotees. But the point is that, so we shouldn't be discouraged that, if we don't get big numbers of people, becoming devotees, banging down the doors. They'll be, the people are out there. The people that are meant to, the people that are, there'll be people, there are people out there that are ready and willing to take advantage of this movement, of these books. So we will have people who are interested. Maybe not everybody, but definitely some. And that's par for the course, considering the Kali Yuga. And we've heard Prabhupada say that if devotees are sincere enough, even that can change. I mean, if devotees become sincere enough and purity is the force, then even people who maybe weren't ordinarily, who you wouldn't think would become interested in spiritual life, could become interested in spiritual life. Yeah, so these books are really special. Just like in contrast, I mean, to Prabhupada's books, what do you have? Like, what's the most famous author in the history of the Western world? Who would you say? Who's the most famous author in the history? It's really kind of a no-brainer. Who's the most famous author in the history of the Western world? King James. Who? Yeah, Shakespeare. That's a no-brainer. Shakespeare, okay? What's Shakespeare's most famous work? He's not an author. For his words, but author. I'm talking about a writer. Okay, let's take Prabhupada as a writer in his books as literature. The most famous author would be Shakespeare. That's how. And what was his most famous work? There's a few that are pretty famous, but Romeo, give me another one. Give me another one. Hamlet. Okay. All right. There's a few of them. Macbeth, Hamlet, like that. But Hamlet would be one of them, if not the one. Okay. So Shakespeare's the most famous author. Hamlet's his most famous work. What's the most famous part of that play? Hamlet's soliloquy. To be or not to be. That is the question. Okay. So I'm going to analyze that for you to make this point. There's the most famous author, Shakespeare, the most famous play, Hamlet. The most famous part is that Hamlet's soliloquy, to be or not to be. So what's the subject matter of that? He's contemplating, should I commit suicide or shouldn't I? See, of the most famous part, of the most famous work, of the most famous author, the subject matter is, the consideration is, should I commit suicide or shouldn't I? He's so bummed out. He's so much like absorbed and compact in despair, hopelessness in life, that he's just thinking, well, should I commit suicide or shouldn't I? And then his consideration is, he goes, another famous line in that soliloquy is, to sleep, perchance to dream. So what he's saying there is that he's thinking, probably I should commit suicide, but maybe if I do, maybe there's going to be something afterwards. And maybe if I commit suicide, maybe I won't be completely dead. He wants to just completely eliminate all experience, and he's worried that after he commits suicide, maybe there's going to be some dream, to sleep, perchance to dream. There's going to still be some experience after that. And then he concludes finally that at the end of the soliloquy, he just goes, you know what? I'm not going to do it because I'm not sure what it's going to be like there. That's that line, conscience makes cowards of us all. Conscience it's translated in different ways in some, but he gets on the mental platform and he decides, you know what, I'm not going to commit suicide because maybe there's something afterwards, and I'm not going to be totally knocked out. I'm not going to be totally gone. So this is the subject matter of the most famous part of the most famous play of the most famous author. What is that? What is that? I mean, in comparison, you have Prabhupada's books, where every purport, every page of 80 books is just the information about who we really are, who God is, what our eternal relationship is with Him, how to revive our awareness of our original nature, which is completely spiritual, how to understand, how to go back to Godhead, how to have a life of eternality, full knowledge and full bliss. In contrast, that's what's in these. So we're offering people something that's like so vastly superior to any kind of literature that they've had the opportunity to get their hands on in this lifetime. Think about it. They're thinking, wow, Hamlet. Well, let me read this great work. Nonsense. Prabhupada's book. Prabhupada's books are really where it's at. This is the first time in their life they're getting their hands on some real literature, something that could really help them in their life, something that can make them happy. Not just happy for a brief time in this lifetime, happy eternally. So these books are really where it's at. They are the solution to their problems, and distributing them is solution to our problems too. Because if we take this seriously, we're going to please Prabhupada, and that's the bottom line. As Amala Bhaktamar just fond of making this point in a lot of his classes, pleasing Krishna. There's that famous verse in the Bhagavatam, Atak Pumbir Dvija Shreshta Barnashrama Vibhagasha Sunusti Tasya Dharmasha Samsiddhir Haritoshanam, that the perfection of all the occupations and all the varnas and all the ashrams is just Samsiddhir Haritoshanam, to please the Supreme Lord Hari. And we know that pleasing the Supreme Lord is accomplished by pleasing the spiritual master. And pleasing the spiritual master is accomplished by distributing these books, going out and doing, spreading this Krishna conscious movement. Of course, distributing books is one of the most important ways to do that. And just yesterday we had a meeting of the the full-time Sankirtan devotees right in Svasa's office, and he read one thing by Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, and one line really stuck in my mind. And he was saying how he said we have to stop this. He said, stop this violence, Nirjan Bhajana. I can't remember the exact words, but that was the gist of it. In other words, he was equating Nirjana Bhajana, the forming bhajan in a secluded place, with violence. Bhakti Siddhanta was saying that. He says, we have to stop this. We have to put an end to this violent Nirjana Bhajana. That's how he considered it. You see, he was so much in a preaching mood that he considered even, hearing and chanting for one's own benefit and on one's own as violence, because you're not, you're a devotee, so you're supposed to be going out there and trying to give it to other people, share it with other people. So if you're just keeping it to yourself like that, it's like you have something that you're supposed to be distributing, some antidote or something like that to some big disease that's going on around the place, and you've been entrusted with the shots or something like that, and you decide to go in your house and just kind of inoculate yourself to make sure you don't get No, you got to go out there and distribute the vaccines, to all the people out there. That's what you're supposed to be doing. So it's kind of like along those lines. That's the point he was making. Innocent, right. Yeah, so we got to go out there and give the innocent people a chance. And somebody you might be concerned. Well, you might think, okay, Bhrgu, you got me a little bit. Maybe I should go out and try, but I'm not good at explaining the philosophy to people, But can I tell you, you don't have to. You don't have to explain any philosophy to people. These books get distributed by the same mystical process that they get written, and that's Krishna's mercy. Prabhupada. I'm not trying to take any credit away from Prabhupada. Prabhupada wrote these books, but Prabhupada himself, he revealed to devotees on a few occasions, a few instances. He said, I read, because they asked Prabhupada, why are you reading your books? We see you're reading your books. And Prabhupada explained, the reason I read my books is because I didn't write these books. Prabhupada said, and this is paraphrasing in so many words, he said, because when I sit down to write these books, Krishna comes and sits down next to me and dictates each word. Something to that effect, right? I'm pretty close on that. As Prabhupada indicated that he had help, Krishna was helping him. I mean, whether it was that Krishna just enlightened his intelligence or actually gave him each word, I don't know. But there's something mystical about these books. I mean, they're not ordinary. When you read Prabhupada's, at least that's the effect, the feeling I have whenever I'm reading or hearing Prabhupada's purports. I just feel like, wait a second, no ordinary person could have written this. Not like one after the other, one purport after the other, after another. And they're just all like, wow. And then you hear the next one and it's go, whoa. It's just every morning. So if I reads I go, whoa. It's not, no ordinary person could do that. Prabhupada had help from Krishna to do that. So as I said, these books get distributed by the same mystical processes which they were written. Krishna's mercy. Krishna's mercy is involved. Krishna's mercy was involved in helping Prabhupada produce these books. He was getting Krishna's mercy to be able to produce these purports. And when you go out and try to distribute them, you get Krishna's mercy. You get Krishna's mercy. You don't have to be like Prabhupada didn't. Prabhupada, he was very educated and a good writer, but Krishna made up whatever he lacked. Krishna made it up. In the same way, if we're just willing, actually the main qualification for being able to distribute books is willingness. That is the main qualification. You just simply, and that's pretty much the main qualification for devotional service in general, but particularly with Sankirtan, you just have to have a willingness. If you're willing, you're going to get the mercy. You just have to be willing to go out there and try. And then Krishna does the rest. To be honest, at this point, I don't say practically anything about the books when I distribute the books. And I'm doing better lately than I've been doing for years. I stop the person and say, just some generic qualifying questions. Excuse me, do you go here? Are you a student? Or if I'm at a shopping center, I'll say, do you work here? You're just shopping, whatever. And they say, and I say, great. And I just hand them the book. I said, this is about meditation. It helps to relieve stress. You heard of stress, right? And they go, yeah. Yeah. And I say, have you heard of monks? And I've just got to get to a certain place here. And they go, yeah, mostly 90% of the people say, yeah. And I say, well, actually, I'm a monk. And they go, oh, really? And and then the very next breath I go, yeah, this is a picture of my teacher. And I show them the picture of Prabhupada. And, to my amazement, as Gauranga Prem is fun, a lot of the people go, when they see, as soon as I show them the picture of Prabhupada, they go, wow, I was really surprised. I didn't expect that. I mean, when I first started doing this, I wasn't expecting that. But a lot of the people, they look at Prabhupada and they go, woo, wow, far out. They're impressed. They just look at Prabhupada and they go, whoa, it's amazing. Every day, same thing happens. And then I say, what's your name? I just ask, I haven't said anything about the book, except for it helps to relieve stress. And then I say, what's your name? And they tell me their name. I say, yeah, well, hey, you look, Jill or Bill or whatever. I say, yeah, you look like a deep thinker. Here, please check this out. People just give a donation. Can you give a donation to help? And that's it. And either they take it or they don't. And if they take it, wonderful. And if they don't take it, I just go on to the next person. And just work right through. And so in other words, you don't have to, the point I'm trying to make is, you don't have to know the philosophy. I mean, you have to know the philosophy in the sense you have to know you're not the body, your spirit, soul, your eternal servant of Krishna. But if you don't feel confident about your ability to explain the philosophy to people, don't worry. You don't have to do that. And be honest with you, even if you can do that, they can't hear it anyway. That's been my experience. Even when I start explaining the philosophy to people on Sankirtan, you could see that there's all of a sudden some weird look comes over their face and they just can't even know what you're talking about. They really don't. So you're almost better off not explaining the philosophy to them. Certainly not too much. I mean, if you want to explain something, to keep it really simple and really basic, because they're just too absorbed in other things. So anyway, that's it. You just can keep it really simple like that. And if you chant your rounds, follow the regulative principles and go out there and try, you might be very, very surprised what happens. So I don't know. 8:15. Okay, so I'll stop there. Does anybody have any questions or comments? This was a marathon pep talk, by the way. Question? Oh. Which one? Okay, it says, the Goshai Thakur has false pride in his birth, which Nityananda Prabhu cut into pieces. I see all these things going on in Vrindavan. Sure. This is Vrindavan Bhajan. This is a poem Prabhupada wrote, right? So it says, the Goshai Thakur has false pride in his birth, which Nityananda Prabhu cut into pieces. I see all things going on in Vrindavan. Therefore I can understand that there is some work to be done here. The Prakrita Sahajas all commit adultery, taking someone else's wife. They go to relish transcendental Leela. This is not Vrindavan, as always think like this, my dear. This is not Vrindavan, as always think like this, my dear mine. Remember the lotus feet of the 6 Goswamis. The 6 Goswamis came and preached religious life. They saved the process of devotional service on the order of Lord Chaitanya. They are eternally perfect associates of the Lord and always remember Radha and Krishna. Remembering them, all the conditioned soul's sins are cleared away. But if he tries to imitate taking on their dress and characteristics, he becomes the plaything of Maya and does not cross over the material ocean. Always preach from Jiva's door to door. Your life will be successful as a result of your preaching. So, Vrindavan Bhajan by Prabhupada. You want me to read 26? Okay. Sri Dayata Das Prabhu gave this instruction. Chant Hare Krishna loudly. This is my initiation. Kirtan is not just drums and cartels. The sound of kirtan is not this modern system. Anything favorable for devotional service is all Madhava. And the only enjoyer of the three worlds is Yadava. Maya's pride and joy, the radio sound, destroy them all by forceful kirtan. And goes on. But yeah, so the point is, Prabhupada is emphasizing here the importance of preaching. You want me to read 27? Okay. Maya is all these newspapers. Preach that throughout the whole world. Sitting alone in your room shouting, you may increase your bile's secretion. But in 10 million births, Sri Hari won't be pleased. Sri Hari is no one's father's property. Come out of your cage. Stop. Stop making objection. Everything belongs to Sri Hari, and Sri Hari belongs to everyone. Chant the Hare Krishna mantra loudly. By performance of such Sankirtan, there will come remembrance automatically. Then there will be Nirjan Bhajan, manifested in the heart spontaneously. That's pretty clear. If you go out and preach, then the ability to be absorbed, internally absorbed, will be there as a reciprocation from Krishna, reciprocating with your sincere efforts to go out and give it to other people. Then you get the mercy, and then when you do chant, you'll experience that internal absorption. Anyway. So does anybody else have anything that? Yeah, Mata.
There's many nice points, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I was wondering about the key to get out of the prison. Does that depend on the karma of the recipient? Because you're saying being fortunate, they were fortunate to use it. Does that depend on their good karma?
Well, I think there's different factors involved. I know there is this one pastime where Prabhupada was walking with a bunch of his disciples, and this one disciple started to ask Prabhupada a question. He said, Prabhupada, it says in the Bhagavad Gita, and he started to quote the verse, Yesham Tvantagatam Papam Gnanam Punyakarmanam. He started to make the point that, Prabhupada says in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, text 28, that only those who have engaged in pious activities in this life and in previous lives, and whose sinful activities are completely eradicated. And so he was going to ask the question, does that mean that in our previous, but Prabhupada cut him off and said, I have created your good fortune. I have created your good fortune. Because ordinarily that's the standard. Somebody has to have engaged in pious activities in this life and in previous lives, and their sinful activities, the reactions to their sinful activities have to be completely eradicated, and then they can engage in devotional service with determination. That's the normal course of affairs. But then Prabhupada's response to that was, I have created your good fortune. So, maybe somebody's out there who's pious, but a lot of people, even if they're not pious, if they just are fortunate enough to... Actually, there's one purport in the 4th canto where Prabhupada says, the pure devotee is always thinking about how to deliver the conditioned souls, and Krishna, being pleased by the pure devotees, thinking like that, he says he enlightens the general populace from within by his causeless mercy. See, so devotees' desire can create people's good fortune. If the devotees are desiring strongly enough that people take the books, take to Krishna consciousness, then Krishna, being pleased with our devotees thinking like that, he inspires the general populace from within by his causeless mercy. In other words, they have no qualification, to really take it, but because actually that's how this movement exists, to be honest with you. That's my understanding. Prabhupada had such a strong desire to execute the instruction of his spiritual master, to fulfill the prediction of Lord Chaitanya, that Krishna just inspired some of us to come forward and take it up. We had no qualification. I mean, that's one way of looking at it. We had no qualification, but it was just Prabhupada's strong desire. We got the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, and he had such a strong, sincere desire to see the Krishna consciousness movement happen that Lord Chaitanya is looking and he's sitting there going, no. forget it. These people are just too unqualified. They're too unfortunate. They're too sinful. And then he's watching, and then Prabhupada keeps trying and trying and trying, and finally Lord Chaitanya and Krishna go, all right. You're so sincere and so determined to see this movement succeed, and you need some people to help you. So okay, you, and you get interested. Come forward. Try to be devotees. See, and it's like it wasn't anything, any good quality of us. It was just because Prabhupada was so determined and so sincere that certain individuals got an inspiration from within to become attracted and come forward to and attempt to be devotees. So that's one perspective. Rabindranath Prabhu.
Yeah, it seems what, tell me if I'm wrong, but it seems like what you're saying about Nirbhajan is that not that it's condemned in and of itself, but it's condemned when it's done by a person who's not at that platform yet.
No, I'm saying more than that. I'm saying that this is a preaching movement, okay? And from what I can understand from Prabhupada's statements and what we read from Bhaktisiddhanta, they didn't consider anybody qualified. They didn't consider anybody on that platform to be doing that. You know, Prabhupada said, I've heard different lectures where Prabhupada said, you know, he wanted his disciples to go out and preach. I mean, of course, you know, there's other activities that are involved in, we have a temple here, so you have certain things that have to go on. But he really did want devotees to go out and preach. He didn't like the idea of people just, you know, spending an exorbitant amount of time on their own hearing and chanting for their own spiritual benefit. He wanted people to be kind of focused on the mission and putting a lot of time and energy into pushing forward the mission. And that might be, and just like in a war, in an army, you have frontline soldiers. Not everybody's a frontline soldier, okay? You know, to put one frontline soldier out there, you got to have a lot of other people doing a lot of other things to support that person. He's got to have weapons, he's got to have a uniform, he's got to have, you know, rations and so forth and so on, you know, see? But the idea is that people's, you know, if you're going to go, if a nation's going to go into a war, they got to be focused on the thing. So in the same way, if a movement's going to go forward, its members have to be focused on the mission. And the mission is to get these books out there, give people Krishna consciousness, and that requires a lot of cooperation from all the different members. Not everybody has to be a frontline soldier, but everybody should be supporting the quote-unquote war effort. That's my understanding.
Yeah, well, I can understand, like, let's say Prabhupada once says all his disciples to preach, but also in this sixth session we have, like Gorkashodas Babaji, he was a Bhajananandi, you know, and different devotees like that. So I'm just, you know, we have examples of that.
Prabhupada didn't instruct us to do like that. He didn't ask us to do that. He didn't, and it didn't. That was not encouraged. That was not Prabhupada's mood.
At the end of that particular quote that you mentioned, Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj also says that if one wants to understand this, then one should join the movement of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. In other words, he gave the example of who we should follow in terms of going out and preaching and speaking to the innocent public. So if you go to the history of Bhaktivinoda Thakur Maharaj, then you'll see what it means to go out and preach.
Yeah.
Like he went, in that quote also, it says that you should go from every door, not to miss one door. You should go from door to door everywhere. And that's what Bhaktivinoda Thakur also did.
Archita.
Thank you very much, Prabhu, for a wonderful, inspiring class. Like everybody here now is desiring to distribute thousands of books this marathon, I'm sure. Just to get back to Rabindranath's point, if you're on the level of Gorkashodas Babaji Maharaj and you don't even have to go out, they come to you. That's what happened. When you're such a pure Bhajananandi, then the public comes to you. You see? They came to him in the droves to hear from him. But he was very selective. He was very selective. If you were not sincere, then he would practically drive you away or he didn't want to hear from you. So when you're on that platform of pure Bhajananandi, then the public will come to you, just like they came to Gorkashodas Babaji Maharaj. If he had Bhagavad Gitas, I'm sure he would have distributed them to them. But he was giving them knowledge, but he made the distinction between those who were sincere and not sincere. Like that rich guy who came and said, oh, I want to be your disciple. Oh, no, you should, no, go home. No, I really want to. Okay, give up everything and just sit down and chant. And then he ran away, you see? So he separated those who were sincere from those who were not sincere.
Okay, Mata.
I was listening online and felt compelled to come in and chime in. When I was taking care of Tamal Krishna's mom, 98 years old, we had a Scrabble board on the table that sometimes we would just spell out messages to each other. And one day she spelled out the message, to be or not to be, that is the question. And here's a 98-year-old lady pondering her mortality, I'm sure. And so I became intrigued by this quote that she had written out. And I realized this was Arjun's dilemma. This was his dilemma also, to be or not to be. Do I lay down my arms and just die on the battlefield and, death by Kshatriya, not willing to fight? It just, how do I do this? What is my purpose? And it's interesting that, as you said, one of the greatest authors and his greatest verse is Arjuna's same dilemma.
Yeah. So we're right up there with the top philosophy. Okay, thank you very much. Kanjot Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Haribol. Pod Ki Jai.